I mentioned that you introduced me to the idea that what the mind doesn't handle is relegated to the body. So if the mind doesn't take it in and deal with it, whatever that is, then it's going to produce a physical symptom in the body, that
Right.
situation.
Right.
But I think it'd be helpful if we could share some stories about that. One of my favorite questions to a patient is, after I know them a good bit and I've got good rapport, I don't jump in the first time and ask this question. It would seem idiotic. Why did you get sick today? Why didn't you wait till Lamar to get sick? Or why didn't you get sick yesterday? This is for acute illness, not chronic illness. And my favorite answer to that was a patient who was in her mid-50s who had diabetes. I saw a lot of patients with diabetes who came in diabetic coma from too high blood sugar and acidosis. That's the state that diabetics gets to when they're not treated. And I said, when she woke up, why did you get sick today? What was going on that's special the day you got sick, which was yesterday? And she said, oh, it's quite clear in my mind why I got sick. That hideous daughter-in-law came by, who I hate and detest, and sat and talked and talked and talked and talked. And I got more and more nauseated at what she was saying. I started vomiting, and I went on into diabetic coma. So it's very clear to me why I got sick yesterday. So that kind of consciousness is unusual. Most people are not that conscious, and you have to draw it out and ask questions and listen and listen and listen. But my view is that the life narrative is almost always flowing into the disease or the symptoms. The story of that patient's life leads you to that state and that point in time where the illness, whether it's chronic or acute,
I'd agree, yeah. As you talked about it, I recall a patient that we had on the research service at Columbia University. And this fellow, we had a huge unit, by the way, of hypertensive patients that we were studying from different angles. And this fellow with the high blood pressure, every once in a while would go into congestive heart failure. And his pressure would go sky high, and he couldn't figure out what it was. A little talking, as you say, we found out that it occurred worst on a weekend, but any time along during the day, just as you said, what happened today, that this fellow would get a call from his wife, or she would threaten to visit the unit. And invariably, his pressure would go up and he'd go into congestive heart failure, which, of course, was a big emergency deal. But what he couldn't manage, and I don't like to point here, I don't think mind is up here. I don't think mind is brain, and brain's not mind. Anyway, the mind-body relationship, the mental, physical unity of the personage, of all of our makeup, what the mind can't manage appropriately and resolve will be relegated to the body. Right away, his pressure went up, his heart rate got too fast, and sure enough, he's plunged into a significantly emergency thing.
Had he had the mental equipment and experiences and whatnot, 1,000 different things, he could have avoided that by either separating the relationship or confronting it or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. One of my other favorite stories is a friend of mine had a patient that had diffuse symptoms of all sort, and hypoglycemia is a favorite label that most often is not accurate. He tested her, and she didn't have hypoglycemia, and he told her that, and she said, well, I know I do, and people with that label often get insistent that they have that condition. And so about 6 months later, he gets a phone call from her, and she said, I believe you now that I don't have hypoglycemia, and in fact I'm well and don't have any symptoms. And he said, well, how do you explain that? And she said, I got a divorce. So separating from toxic relationships. My view is, and you take a broader view, is that there are either toxic relationships out there between somebody that you're not reconciled in how to deal with or live with, or toxic substances. So my job in someone who has symptoms, physical symptoms, is to try to find out which of the two might be going on. And it's a delicate set of questions you have to ask. And I have them keep a diary each day of listing the foods they took in, where they were, who were they with, what were they thinking about. And if the symptom is coming 4 times a day, I have them make 4 entries. If it's once a day symptom, once a day entry into the diary. And the diary method, taught to me by Dr. Tinsley Harrison, is a wonderful device to try to direct their conscious mind to making observations they're not making.
Good move. I'd look at what's happening in each day really as being their having to confront a problem. So their reaction of mind-body would be to what I would call in the general a stressor. And I define stressor as anything you wish was different.
That's neat. That's neat.
The word stressor didn't come into being, by the way, until about 1952. And they called it stress and called it a noun. But stress is an active thing. Stress is how you respond actively, mentally, physically to a stressor. So a stressor doesn't have to be anything specific. It can be an imponderable thought even. And it goes back over a person's entire history. And of course you're narrowing it down to what the wife did, creating a thought, a stressor that he's reacting to, and goes into a physical problem because the resolution isn't there. So we're really along the same lines. I'm just taking it all in a general sense.
You're going back into what you call the script, and I hope in a future next segment we can get into the script.
Yeah.
The description is a little more detailed. But an example of a toxic substance was a girl I had who was about 23, and she had diarrhea, and the diarrhea was not constant, so it was very difficult to capture anything in the observations along the diary. So finally she came in one day and said she'd figured out what it was, that she was chewing sugarless chewing gum, and sugarless chewing gum has sorbitol in it, and sorbitol is not absorbed. So if you have a lot of it, it's an inert substance drawing fluid into the gut, and you get diarrhea if you chew more than 8 sticks a day. So on days when she chewed 4 sticks, she had no diarrhea. If she chewed above 8 sticks, she got diarrhea.
Son of a gun.
So there are substances out there that go undetected unless you really become a detective to find out what they were.
Carrying it beyond substance, I had a partner in medicine for 25, 30 years, and his name Don Gennardi, and he grew up in a household where he always had to be in a hurry. Hurry up, Don, hurry up, hurry up, Don, hurry up. His parents were just like little canaries that hopping around, and I knew them pretty well. If he wasn't hurrying, if he wasn't constantly busy, he felt guilty. And every time he felt guilty, he'd have diarrhea.
Oh, fascinating.
So Don had to be constantly busy. I've seen him in the office. If he caught up with his patient load, he would go in the office and purposely wait 10 minutes till he could get behind, and out of his awareness when he got behind. Yeah. So he could be constantly hurrying, following what you were saying, script, and we'll get into that a little more.
That's a great story.
But even though Don knew it, he couldn't stop it.
Yeah, I had a secretary who was a legal secretary, very good apparently, who had high blood pressure. So I had to keep the diary, and it became quickly obvious, she took blood pressure every day, that she had a Thursday, Friday high blood pressure. The rest of the week was elevated, but it's not like Thursday. Thursday and Friday she crescendoed, and so I said, what's going on with that Thursday, Friday high blood pressure? And she said, well, I have a very strict boss, and he does all his work Monday through Wednesday, then he dumps it on me to type and get into briefs and get to the courts by Friday. So Thursday and Friday is a horrible day for me. So she thought about it, and finally she confronted the lawyer, and he highly valued her, so he worked out where she could have a workload spread out, and he hired an assistant typist to keep her from getting overloaded, and the blood pressure came down. Not only did it come down on Thursday, Friday, she came off of all high blood pressure pills
Super.
and was
Yeah.
cured by her own solving that problem with her employer.
Super, and it proved to herself that how she could relieve her stress.
Then, when I told you that story earlier, some time ago, you went into her script and how she must have been scripted to have a father or a parent that was so demanding she didn't feel comfortable. And maybe in the next segment, we could explore scripting and how important that is in
Good.
understanding
Good, we'll do it.
life stories.